Well, today we're going to be talking about the fruit of the Spirit again, and we're going to be talking about the fourth of the fruits of the Spirit. Those are found in Galatians chapter 5, and Paul writes this. He says, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. So we've talked about those first three, love, joy, and peace. And today we're going to be talking about patience. What does it mean to be patient? Well, we know that it has to do with waiting and for suffering a long time. I'm here in front of one of my favorite barns, and unfortunately it's right next to the road, so we're probably going to get a little bit of traffic noise, but I love this setting here. It's just so peaceful and so quiet. And I thought I wanted to do this barn when we talked about patience, because this is kind of one of my places where I like to go. I like to just stand here. I like to look at the water beside me, that barn on the hillside. It's starting to decay a little bit, but it's a beautiful barn. But it just makes me think of patience, the patience it took to build it and to farm this land. And then they put a reservoir in here and took away the farmland. But patience in the Bible is the Greek word makrothumia. You recognize the word macro in there, which means long or big, and thumia, which means a desire or to suffer. It talks about a passion for something. Macrothumia is literally long suffering. It's when you wait a long time for something. In fact, in Hebrews chapter 6, the writer of Hebrews tells us that was the mark of Abraham. His faith was reckoned to him as righteousness because of the patience he had in waiting for the promise of God. He waited 25 years for the coming of his son, Isaac. He was promised the son, and 25 years later, God came through on that promise. Just imagine the patience of waiting 25 years on something that God promised you. And then by the time that promise comes through, I think he was 99 or 100 years old. He was beyond the age of childbearing. Sarah was 90 years old, but God came through on the promise. He certainly was tempted to give up on that promise of God, but God came through, and it's that long suffering, that patient enduring that he went through that brought him to that. Now, the word macrothumia is interesting in the Greek language because it doesn't show up hardly at all before the Bible. And even after the Bible, it kind of disappears in Greek. It just kind of shows up during that Christian era. And it really makes macrothumia, long-suffering, a Christian word in the real sense. That was not a virtue to the Greeks. It was a virtue to the Romans. The Romans valued long-suffering. And the word macrothumia has with it the ability to take revenge, but to not do so. Now, the Greeks, on the other hand, they had a quality. It was megalopsukia, that's what it is, megalopsukia, which means that you don't bear any injury or insult. You just take your vengeance right then and there. You can see the difference between the Greeks and the Romans. So the Romans didn't really use this word macrothumia. The Christians took this word and used it. Now, it shows up about 24 times in the New Testament, and 4 of those are in the book of James in chapter 5. 4 of those 24 occurrences in the New Testament occur in one book, one chapter, in a space of about 4 verses. Let me read those verses to you so you get an idea of what patience is to the writers of the Bible. This is James chapter 5, verse 7. Therefore, be patient, brethren, until the coming of the Lord. The farmer waits for the precious produce of the soil, being patient about it until it gets the early and late rains. You too be patient. Strengthen your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is near. Isn't it interesting that it uses this phrase twice to talk about the coming of the Lord? You know, it's been 2,000 years. It's been 2,000 years since the disciples and the apostles and the early church thought, man, Jesus is going to come any day now. And he hasn't come yet, has he? We're still waiting, but we're waiting patiently. We're going to have a loud car here for about 10, 20 seconds. So, got to be patient, right? So I think that's hilarious that God sent a loud car to interrupt the study when he's teaching us patience. So the coming of the Lord is we're supposed to show this long suffering. And what that means is we're going to suffer while we wait. People are going to say, he's never coming. You know, I've heard this in my own church. I've heard people say, oh, they've been saying he's right around the corner for forever. That's not true. That's not true at all. If you look back 100 years to the sermons and the writings about the end times, there was hardly anything. And it's just in the last 100 years that we've started to see this, and now it's multiplying quicker and quicker. It's a very visible sign of the nearness of the coming of the Lord. But let me finish off James chapter 5 here. Do not complain, brethren, against one another, so that you yourselves may not be judged. Behold, the judge is standing right at the door. So when they're complaining about people who say, oh, Christ is going to return any day now, and people laugh at you and mock you, and they laugh at that, he says, be patient. Don't complain. Don't complain about one another. The judge is standing right at the door. As an example, brethren, of suffering and patience, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. We count those blessed who endured. You have heard of the endurance of Job and seen the outcome of the Lord's dealings. The Lord is full of compassion and is merciful. Right after talking about patience 4 times, he talks about endurance and the suffering of the prophets and of Job. But God is full of mercy and compassion. That's what we remember when we patiently endure. God bless.